here's the deal. After the electoral votes are cast, they have to be accepted by Congress. The electoral votes were cast on December 14th. By law, the House and the Senate meet together on January 6th. And if any state's ballots are challenged by one member of the House and one member of the Senate, then the House and the Senate must meet separately and vote on the challenge. Now, 126 members of Congress signed on to the Texas lawsuit to overturn Joe Biden's victory. That many Republican senators have not accepted Biden as the president-elect. Some states are going to be challenged. There's not 126 senators. There's a error in the way this is written. Let me read this paragraph. Given that 126 members of Congress signed on to the Texas lawsuit to overturn Biden's victory, and that many, not that many as in equaling 126, and that a lot of Republican senators have not accepted Biden as the president-elect, some states are going to be challenged. And this is where things get interesting. The controlling federal law, the Electoral Count Act, you ever heard of that? The ECA, the Electoral Count Act, it's more than 100 years old, said to be very opaque. It has never been fully used. And thehill.com says here it may not even be constitutional. Now, the Congress over which the old vice president will be presiding will be the new one, sworn in January 3rd. The new House, narrowly Democratic, will vote down any challenge, but the Senate, something very different could occur there because the Republicans, we don't know yet, but they're still going to control the Senate on this date. So, let's play. Let us suppose that the balance in the Senate is 52 to 48 Republican. However, Senators Romney, Ben Sasse, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski have said that Biden won. So Biden wins in a close vote, right? And even if the Senate votes to uphold the challenges, the ECA has a tie-breaking provision. Any slate of electors that is certified by their state's governor will be accepted if the House and Senate disagree. So under that scenario, Biden again would win. Thus, the New York Times assumes that Republican challenges to the electoral votes would be futile. But what if the Senate never finishes voting? The Electoral Count Act limits each challenge to no more than 2 hours of debate. 4 states were questioned in the lawsuit: Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Their practices were questioned. That makes 4 challenges and 8 hours of delay. Even in the Senate, 8 hours of debate cannot last more than a couple of days, right? Now, the law envisions the ability to challenge electoral votes collectively or individually. So somebody like Ted Cruz could come along and would challenge not every state, but each electoral vote separately. And as a delaying tactic, why wouldn't the Trumpers challenge every Biden slate, a state, even Delaware? The goal here in this procedure is not actually to win. The goal is to delay, to prevent the tie-breaking provision of the ECA from happening. Remember, the presiding officer under the Electoral Count Act would be Mike Pence. He could be expected to interpret the rules in a way highly favorable to the Republicans. Look, all of this is a real long shot, but I'm just pointing out that they're worried about it in the Senate. McConnell is worried that somebody in the Republican Party is going to try to trigger this and hope for a long shot of upsetting the apple cart and preventing Biden from being selected by the Electoral College. Pence could be expected to interpret the rules in a way highly favorable to Republicans. He can help the GOP delay any resolution until about January 18th. Now, I know this is confusing, and it's largely confusing because of journalism is such woeful state right now. People writing about these things have a tough time explaining them. But the Electoral Count Act, which I very, very brilliantly just described, is what Republican Trump supporters in 3 states have elected alternative electors for. That's why this happened. That's why they elected an alternative slate of electors, because of this, the Electoral Count Act. They were all thinking forward about how maybe they could put one more maneuver into play. Now, here comes the endgame maneuver. The Constitution specifies that if there is no Electoral College winner, the Senate chooses the vice president, and the House would pick the president. All of this came up, by the way, in Bush v. Gore in 2000. I don't expect a lot of people to remember it, but it did, because the Constitution was the same then as it is now. So, under this endgame maneuver, the Senate, claiming there's no Electoral College result, would pick Pence as the vice president. Overturning an election? Why not? The raw hatred and polarization in American politics has shown that no precedent or law is safe. Ask Merrick Garland. All these people at thehill.com are just fit to be tied. Now, it won't be a Biden-Pence administration. The Democrat majority in the House cannot pick Biden, because when picking a president, the House votes by state delegation, and the Republicans control more House delegations. This could result in Trump being elected president if they pull this off, because there are more Republican state delegations. It's not a matter that the Democrats control the House. It's the fact that there are more Republican state delegations, and that's how the vote is, because it's all relative to the Electoral College. Now, thehill.com says here that the House Democrats will never let this vote happen. If that's the case, if everything else that I've described happens, but that there is not a final vote, it means we won't have a president. If we don't have a president by noon on January 20th, the law of presidential succession comes into play. But who's next in line? Republicans will say that the presidency is empty, but the Senate did its job and picked Pence as vice president. The Democrats will say the whole process was illegal and unconstitutional, and that the next in line is therefore Pelosi. This would be the stalemate of all stalemates. An empty presidency at noon on January 20th. Trump tweeting that it should remain his, Democrats saying Pelosi or Biden, some Republicans secretly hoping it's Pence. And if you're thinking that the Supreme Court would save Biden, think again. It would probably rule the question to be a political one and therefore non-judiciable, meaning they wouldn't have standing to look at it anyway. There isn't a clear constitutional principle or law that the court could apply. That takes us to the next story, the headline of which is